Y'all know I'm just clowning. Y'all know I'm just clowning. And we about to get into it. Let me start off by saying the title of this video is called Black Egypt Debunked. Okay? This is the nail in the coffin. My name is Chief X, and I'm coming and doing this presentation basically because I'm sick of the bullshit. I'm tired of the lies. I'm tired of the misinformation. And I'm especially tired of all the hotep hustling. Let me burp. Yeah, all the hotep hustling has to go. So let me open up with this intro and explain a few things right now up front. First off, this presentation, this rant, this personal discussion, these things I want to get off my mind and off my heart is important, enlightening. And what I need people to understand is, first of all, let me say this. If you don't have time, if you don't have an hour and a half to complete this presentation from right now to the end of it, click off the video. Come back later when you have time to completely watch this video from beginning to the end. The end of the video, towards the end, will have the meat and daggers of the discussion. Okay? So this may take a while because it's a vast and topic, and it's a lot I need to lead up to. It's a lot I need to explain before I get into it. So I need people to watch the lead up all the way into the end to get a full understanding of what I'm trying to get across to my black brothers and sisters. Okay? My black American brothers and sisters. If you don't have time, please click off and come back and watch this video when you can get your popcorn, when you can sit back and relax after you rolled your blunt, and you don't have shit to do for about an hour or hour and a half. I'm not sure how long it will be, because sometimes I just, get to ad-libbing and shit comes to my mind, and I just get to talking, and it's on. Okay? Come back when you got time. I always can tell if someone watched the complete entire video by their comment, because it will be off. I've been making videos a long time, and I know when someone has not watched the complete video and trying to rebut something, they got emotional and snapped and clicked off and want to make a comment and ain't heard it all yet. Because a lot of y'all be emotional wrecks. You're reactionary and not rational. Okay? Now, please do that for me. Because when the comments come and we have a discussion, I want this to be a grown person discussion with maturity and honesty. Get out your feelings. Be objective. And think. In this presentation, to understand and to comprehend, because a lot of people have bad listening comprehension, this is going to take more so good logic. I'm throwing a bunch of facts and daggers in here, but you have to have good logic to put it all together and come to a conclusion and then have an understanding. Now, I also at times may get very passionate. I might cuss. I might talk shit. But this is just all how I'm feeling and how I want to get down and how I get down sometimes. Chill out. If you got sensitive people around you, click off and get back at the video when you got time. Okay? This is just the way I talk. I might cuss, laugh, tell jokes, get hyped up, get amped up, all the above. But it's going to be entertaining and educational. And it will leave you with the understanding that, you know what, Chief X? You've been right all year long. You have debunked Black Egypt. And this is the nail in the coffin. I appreciate you, Chief X, you should say. And move on. And evolve mentally to change. Too many people have been stagnant for years. If you're not involving your thought changing and engaging knowledge and information and understanding, you will never achieve the wisdom. Because wisdom comes from reflection, years of reflection, experience, years of reflection of information and knowledge that you learned, that you reflected on, and came to higher and higher and higher understandings as the years went by. Too many of y'all are stagnant and stuck. Okay? So, now that I get that out the way, Chief X, why are you making this video? I have to explain this, y'all. Bear with me. Okay? The reason why I'm making this video is because I think as the so-called conscious community is making Black people look bad on the world stage with a lot of misinformation, bad history, crazy, wild beliefs, and this low cultural and esteem, basically. Like sometimes I say, when women say, I don't hate myself because I got such and such a weave. Nobody's saying you hate yourself. What I usually like to say is, I don't like to say you have bad self-esteem because that's not true. Because there can be 10 parts of you and you got to issue with one. So what I tell women, you have low hair esteem. And that's in general, that's true. So a lot of us suffer from this low cultural, historical esteem. You know what I mean? Like, why are you making this video, Chief X? Because I'm sick of it. Okay? I reflected and I started off my flashpoint in 1992. So I've been around the conscious community more than about 90% of the people who may listen to this. I'm 51 years old. My flashpoint was the Nation of Islam in 92. I never was suited and booted, but for 2 years I would religiously go to the mosque. I would sit like they do. I would go to all their study groups, and I believed in what they were saying and teaching in the program at that time. Okay? I found fault in that. Then I start studying with the Moors. So I'm evolving, I'm learning. I never really got suited and booted with the nation because I'm a skeptic by nature. I'm a skeptic through and through. So I sat back and observed and participated. I found fault. I studied with the Moors. I found fault in that. I started studying with Hebrew Israelites. Then I started studying Islam. And then around 1998, 1997, I started hearing a lot about Ashwakwasi, and I started studying ancient Egypt. And I told myself, why am I trying to fit in with a group? Why am I trying to belong and just be a part of something so much? Because, we leave the church and the fellowship of the church. Without the fellowship of the church and stuff, sometimes as Black folk, we feel empty, so we move on to another belief. You know what I mean? So we kind of just keep switching beliefs on this journey of life, on this journey to become aware and conscious, you know? Um, so I found fault in these things and I started studying ancient Egypt and Nile Valley civilization. And I immediately became attracted to it. I truly believe that those were my people, my ancestors, and that we descended from a people who built pyramids. And I descend from a people who made all those monuments, those beautiful, amazing monuments and statues in Egypt. I believed that. I began to get tattoos on my body and still have them. And I have no problem with them because it's part of my journey. It's part of my intellectual history. And it was where I was at that point in my life. Okay, we're gonna get to the slide presentation. Just bear with me. Okay, so um, ramp up to 3 years from today. Okay, I'll say 4. I began to get disenfranchised and have feelings that a lot of people were full of shit. You know, I got into business and I realized the conscious community talk all this black power stuff, but they are the least people who support me in business. They're the least people who can get together in unity and put events together and make change. I mean, you know, it's just a bunch of drama, you know. Um, I started a moringa company in business. Then I said, I need to step my game up because these black folk is buying moringa, but they not get buying it from me. They not buying it from the 2 other black-owned moringa businesses I know. They all getting it online. I'm pushing. They not caring. They not supporting. You know, some people are supporting, but I'm just saying in general, the 2, 3 black moringa businesses I know should have been rich. I'm looking at everybody got moringa, but nobody's buying from. I know these 3 black-owned moringa businesses, so I end up putting my moringa in the store. I got insurance and got professionalized and had an interview at a health food store and restaurant, and I broke down with my product. What do I want to do? And I had sheets, and I had put a presentation together, and it was an interview, and they allowed my stuff to go in their health food store, and that's where I make the vast majority of my money selling moringa. But that's just a little side hustle. Okay, so I noticed people besides business, like we would have RBG Family Weekend. I'm like, yeah, you know, see, I'm down and I'm a real one. So I said, yeah, they have an RBG Family Weekend. I started going to RBG Family Weekend every summer. Nobody was going to these reefs. Some people would show up and the RBGs would be there. We had party, we had fun. And second year I went a third time. And I said, one day, because it was getting bigger and bigger, more participation. One day we should have RBG Family Weekend in Africa and just make it an international affair. Infighting start going on. People start falling off that. Cliques and shit was hating. People were starting other so-called RBG weekend events in other states, and it just thinned out, and people was hating and arguing and infighting, and it was just went crazy and just never jumped off. Then we have the Black Power Awards, put on by DJ in Atlanta. That was supposed to be an institution, a yearly event. I went to the Black Power Awards, and I'm going to tell you, I'm 51 years, I've been around and done a lot, and I'm not going to hate. That shit was off the hook. The first one. The initial one. It was live. You had to come dressed up. You couldn't come in no tennis shoes. No, you had to come dressed up. People came in their African gear. We was dressed up and sharp and T to T. Had hats and brims. We was cold-blooded. Pictures was everywhere. And the attendance filled the room. Soon as that one was over, niggas started hating. Looking at DJ. How much money is he making? off this, trying to figure out how they can put on award shows. SaNeter acted like a little snake and caused a little division. And then he had him an award show. Then the Black Power Award show thinned down, and people start filtering to go to SaNeter stuff, and it just fell off and infighting, people arguing and hating. And then the next year they had the Black Power Awards again. It wasn't as good. And now you haven't seen one since. I said, people are a joke in this community. I went to the Black Power. I went to every major event for unity. And these people I know on social media and YouTube just talking shit. Nobody's serious and sincere. Then I started getting into the history and realizing a lot of our master teachers were full of shit. A lot of my master teachers were habitual liars. They was miseducating people. And it just, things began to just snowball for me. Where I was just like, fuck it. I'm a truth seeker. I don't care about nobody else. I'm steadily evolving like I evolved from the Nation of Islam, the Moors, the Hebrews, Orthodox Islam, in Egyptologies. I'm involved from that. Okay? So, Dr. Ben is like the godfather of Black Americans and learned about Egypt. But Dr. Ben, I came to see, wasn't an honest person. And this is like he didn't have the degrees. He said he wasn't a real doctor. He lied about where he was from. He wasn't from Ethiopia. His daddy is not Ethiopian. He's a West African just like us. They got off a boat in the Caribbean. His children even said they not from Ethiopia. He says his mother was Puerto Rican. He never says Afro-Puerto Rican. So I started to put things together. I said, well, Dr. Ben is kind of acting like he's not one of us and distanced himself. He's not African American. He's not from West Africa. He is. Dr. Ben is genetically West Central African. Ain't nothing about him Ethiopian. Is nothing about him Puerto Rican. He calls his mother. He doesn't say Afro, he say Puerto Rican. He is not biracial. Dr. Ben is nappy as hell. He's nappy as me. There's nothing wrong with being nappy. I'm just saying. How do you die broke if you're a real credentialed teacher? See, teachers and professors get a pension from their work and being employed. Why aren't these people employed? Why aren't half these master teachers employed? Then I go on to Runoko Rashidi, who's from Los Angeles. I grew up going to his lectures. But about 4 years ago, a lot of us, what I call junior elders, wanted to invite Runoko Rashidi on to a live stream show and talk. I didn't have no attitude. I personally inboxed him one time and asked him, do you want to come on such and such show and let's have a discussion? Because he was talking some stuff that we didn't agree with, and we just wanted to have a friendly elder to the younger generation conversation and real nice. Runoko Rashidi turned all of it down. Matter of fact, when I inboxed him, he blocked me. Because everyone knows he was calling Dravidians. These are Black African people. They from all India. They African. These are all this old picture game, misinformation, claiming everybody who's melanated is Black. The Moors are nappy-headed African. We ruled Spain. All this old garbage, revisionist history, and he just dissed us and didn't want to have a conversation with us. I'm like, why is none of the elders wanting to talk to us? Because a lot of the information became outdated. The younger generation began to know more, and they knew that and was hating. So all these elders hating lying and teaching misinformation and refuse to correct themselves. That's why you've never heard one elder ever say, you know what, I was wrong about this. Excuse me, this was misinformation. I've changed. I'm gonna correct this. You know, we correct ourselves all the time. With younger generation, oh yeah, what's wrong? You will never hear elders because it was all a hotep hustle. Walter Williams, not even a real doctor. He got to talking about we have to claim Egypt. Nothing else is important. We got to claim that glorious time in history when all these achievements were being made. That is our key and our goal. Those are our answers. These people are saying this. These are our ancestors. These are our people. They're not. But let's continue. Tony Browder going on missions to Egypt and people donating to him, and that money's going to a European organization who's doing some reconstruction and digging in Egypt. We paying white boys, and here come Tony Browder on their train, and we not even knowing we giving money to white folk, and Anthony Barter's going on fucking vacation. He coming back with misinformation. We paying Tony Browder to come back with misinformation. He's photoshopping pictures, doing lectures to the black Americans, telling he found Andikran symbols in Egypt with Photoshop pictures and lies. I challenge him on this, and nobody responds or answers because you're caught red-handed lying. Infodie, she's selling crystals and saying these crystals affect you and all this old pseudoscience, and all these elders was into pseudoscience, misinformation, fake history, stealing culture, being culture vultures, saying we're the Moors, we're not the fucking Moors. We're going to get into that in the lecture. We're the Native Americans, we're not the fucking Native Americans. We're going to get into that also. We're going to get into a bunch of shit. But this shit got me disenfranchised, upset, and pissed off, and evolving from y'all's fuckery and lies. Are we debunking Black Egypt tonight? Okay? What was I going to say? 1 second. Yeah, so I'm doing this because we're looking bad on the world stage. See, what we do is we intellectually masturbate within the conscious community to each other, trying to impress each other. Like, I know this, I know more than you, and we intellectually. But outside of the conscious community, the real world of academia is laughing at y'all. They're laughing at us. We're sounding stupid. Your steam's so low, you can't be proud of being a West African. So Dr. Ben doing all these tours and taking everybody to Egypt every year. 2 other people start doing tours, taking people to Egypt every day. Guess what we doing? Disrespecting our real ancestors. All we've been doing is contributing to the economy of North Africans, Berbers, Arabs, Coptics, and Egyptians. While West Africa is not doing good. They can use all y'all travel money and support for their economy. But you say you're Pan-African. But you ain't been to Ghana. You ain't been to Nigeria. And I'm not saying you something if wrong and everybody always can't go. But what I'm saying is for 30, 40 years, people have been traveling in the conscious community going to motherfucking Egypt. Helping another fucking whole people's economy. When I got up the means to go to Africa, which was my 50th birthday a year and a half ago, I went to Ghana. For 10 years, I said, I'm going, whenever I take a trip out this country, I'm not going to no motherfucking Caribbeans, which is some fucking European resort, a fucking holiday vacation spot. I'm going to Ghana, where my ancestors, my bloodline was picked up on ships and brought to America. I'm going home, I said. And I went to Ghana, I went to 4 different museums. Not in any of them museums did I see one Kemetic or Egyptian symbol artwork. It was West African stuff there only. Them people don't have nothing, they don't claim Egypt, I realized, at all. I went out there and broke down. I went to an orphanage and seen the living conditions in the bathrooms who smelled so fucking bad because they didn't have no plumbing systems. And I said, all these people running behind some motherfucking Arabs. And I'm not racist. I'm not bad talk. I'm just being passionate and, raw. Running to Arabs and Berbers and North Africans, giving all them their money. They ain't went to visit that orphanage. They didn't go support the cities in Ghana and contribute to their economy. Why is that? Think about this. If for these 40 years since Dr. Ben been taking people to trips, telling people this is what you are, you're a descendant of the Egyptians, and he wasn't saying this is what you are, go to West Africa. He was pushing Egypt, Egypt, Egypt. He never did tours in West Africa and took people to West Africa. That's disrespectful, in my opinion, in 2021. Just think if all these 40 years or however long that all these trips from Dr. Ben, Ashwa Kwesi, and any other Hotep hustler doing this shit now, just think if for 40 years all them trips was to West Central Africa. We could have had some kind of unity and a bridge and an economic bridge by now. We got led astray. 40 years of thousands of people going back and forth to West Central Africa, we would have had a bridge. Some networking by now. All them so-called scholars and intellectuals in and out of West Central Africa for 40 years. We missed out because we had cultural low esteem. Running behind another culture that wasn't ours, that we didn't descend from at all. Nothing related to them genetically, culturally, in any kind of way. And we're going to get into that. But I had to open up with this intro and let you know where I'm coming from and why I'm making this video and why I'm pissed off. You got scholarship groups. Amin-Ra Squad. You got SaNeter out here. Has SaNeter ever said has he ever put together a black business weekend thing on his channel where he promotes all black businesses and talks about how we can support each other and put people out there who has legit great businesses and just done something progressive like that? No. I mean, I used to look up to the Amin-Ra Squad, but now I see them different. You know what I mean? You got Polite, who would probably be one of the most popular in the conscious community, that these fools is looking up to it, and he's the biggest scammer ever, biggest liar ever. A new Wapian. Today in 2021, Polite still co-signs Dr. York. Dr. York had the biggest child molestation case in the United States in the history of the United States. I don't think you guys understand what I'm saying. Think about this. The conscious community, basically, their cult leader were Polite, Wu Jiao of the Amun-Ra Squad, Ankh of the Amun-Ra Squad, Polite, they all have their origins in, was the biggest child molestation cult leader person in the history of America. That's no exaggeration. That is the conscious community. Nutcases. Polite just last year was defending Dr. So SaNeter just last year was defending Dr. York. It's on video. Y'all know I'm not lying. I will not tell one lie or not a bit of misinformation tonight. Every single thing I state tonight will be backed up. SaNeter was so thirsty, he was having Dr. York's son on his show, Prince York. And at that time, this nigga was so thirsty, he got to talking about, I don't even know if Dr. York really did that. Well, come on, Prince York. Come on, Polite. You fucking child molester apologist. I don't fuck with nobody who co-signs child molestation and protects molesters. Now, Wu Jiao of the Amun-Ra Squad. Now, I'm not coming up with y'all. Kind of halfway like with y'all, but I just got to say this. Wu Jiao was in every court date with Dr. York, defending him, speaking up for him like a lackey. He know Dr. York's case more than anybody in the conscious community besides Chuck Morgan. Y'all didn't know that? The Amun-Ra Squad are former Nuwaubian members. Ankh Kakek of the Amun-Ra Squad calls Polite his boy. They vibe. Garfield called Polite the GOAT. Do you see why I'm disenfranchised with these fakes and frauds and pissed off? You niggas calling Polite molesting ass the GOAT when you know for a fact that he's an habitual liar. You know for a fact he's the biggest scam artist the conscious community has. You know for a fact he'd come out of Nuwaubian defending child molestation and all kind of gay fucking shit. This is why Chief X is pissed off with a lot of people and see y'all as jive turkeys and bullshit. That shit is real, what I just said. The conscious community gotta take the L for being, in the Nuwaubians, for the biggest child molestation case in American history. Tell me I'm lying. And Polite is the most popular person, looked up to person in the conscious community. You sick bastards. When Polite came on the scene selling that real estate bullshit and trying to tell people to buy these fucking lands that you can't build shit on, I knew that. But you ignorant niggas didn't know that. And I was telling you from Jump Street 8 years ago, Polite's a total fraud. Guess why? Because I'm a former licensed real estate agent and loan officer in the state of California, and I know them niggas and what they doing and trying. He's selling vacant fucking land that you gotta go bid on. You might win, you might not. You're wasting time if you do win and bid on it. You can't build shit on it. If you could, them Jews and white boys and Asians would have bought that shit up by now. I kept telling people this. He was taking thousands of dollars from people about this property shit, and that's how he jumped off his shit. This is why I'm pissed. Defending child molestation and all kinds. I'm way off the topic. I told you I might go on a rant, but you know what? Let me get to my shit. You know what I mean? SETI and young Pharaoh, fucking nutcases. I used to dig Pharaoh, not Pharaoh, excuse me. SETI because he had this fire that was different, you know what I mean? But I realized after a while, all he would be doing is picture show. You never see scholarship from outside my student SETI. He'll take your ass on a picture show, fucking entertainment, picture slides and entertainment, and talk it and point out. But this looks similar. That shit is trash and it never was scholarship. I'm mad at myself today for falling for these clowns. Okay, let me get to my lecture. So, I just wanted to give that opening and let you know why I'm mad and bothered and what I see and what I've realized, right? So, let's just talk. I'm on this first page right here. Eurasian origins of Berbers and modern... No. I'm sorry. Excuse me. Let's just get to this real quick. Let me just do this real quick. We are... most people listening to me, African Americans, are tropical Africans. We're not desert Africans. Okay? We debunking Black Egypt now. We are tropical Africans. I don't know if you can see. Let me just make it bigger. Oops, excuse me. Right here. Below the Sahara is in general, not all areas, but you see my mouse. This is tropical Africa, and we are tropical Africans. This is strictly science. This is not a lie. This is not my motherfucking opinion. None of that. We are not desert Africans or North Africans up here. That's what we're not. Egypt is North Africa. It's desert Africans. I'm the only one who has been saying all along that all Africa is not Black Africa. We're going to get into these terms. Black. Oops. We're going to get into these terms. Black. We're going to talk about woolly, kinky hair. Oh, it goes deep. Don't click off. Woolly, kinky hair. We're going to be talking about Ethiopia, which was basically what sub-Saharan Africans was called in those times, the Greco-Roman times, Ethiopians. We're not talking about Ethiopia. That was formerly Abyssinia. But we're talking about, they called this Ethiopia. Any kinky-haired, woolly-haired African was considered an Ethiopian in the Greco-Roman Mediterranean world. We are not North Africans. Let's get that off the rip. Okay? Can y'all see this? Let me see if I can make this a little... No, let me get on some words. Oops. keep clicking on shit I ain't supposed to be clicking on. Okay. We are tropical Africans, right? This is North Africa. I'm from, my DNA results, Ghana's right here, if you can see my mouse. Nigeria's right here. I am 26% Nigerian. I'm 25% Ghanaian. I'm a tropical African. All of sub-Saharan Africa is woolly, kinky-haired Africans. North Africa is not kinky, nappy, woolly-haired Africans. Those are desert Africans. I'm the one who is saying there's white Africa and there's black Africa. I don't mean literally. I'm just using those as juxtaposed or in contrast. I just say sometimes I say white Africa, black Africa. So Africa has never been all black Africa. Black, woolly, nappy, kinky-haired Africa has never set up camp and inhabited these lands in North Africa, and that still goes for today. They were never in them lands. Let me show something else before I move from this. Okay, now, I'm a forest people. When I went to Ghana, I didn't just stay in Accra. I went inland to Kumasi. And on that 4-hour drive on that bus, I was looking at all this forest land. You see where it says green right here? It says forest land. I'm a forest people. When I went into the forest and got that honey and I had that video people see me in, I felt so at home. I said, I wish I could live up in here. That's how at home I felt like no other place I've been to in my life. Now, I'm not being spooky and it's a pseudoscience. I'm just trying to tell you how I felt when I was in the forest in Ghana. When we went to the rainforest on the tour. We are forest people, most African Americans. We are tropical Africans. You see right here, it says semi-desert. This is the Sahara right here, basically. I don't like this map, but the Sahara Desert would act it as a barrier. The dark brown says extreme desert. We're not that type of extreme desert African. We're tropical Africans. So like when you go to this map, you'll see where it says right here, I don't know if you guys is big enough on the screen. Tropical rainforest. It's in black. This is Ghana. It's tropical rainforest. The Congo over here, tropical rainforest. Now, other areas are what you would call semi-tropical. This is desert, arid Africa. We're not that and never have been. Desert Africans do not have kinky, woolly hair. We're going to get into that. Remember everything I'm saying. Where's this other map? Real quick, y'all. These is different maps with, is this it? One second. Well, I can't find that. I don't want to be too long or be redundant. But basically, they were showing you that this area for 6,000 years was a barrier. Okay? Between North Africa and sub-Saharan Africa. Okay? And it was suitable for camels and barely inhabitable for 6,000 years now. So these people weren't just too much going up and traveling up and down here. where the mouse is. Okay, so this you have to understand, and this is a comprehensive thing, that you're a tropical African. First off, understand that. Here's a world map. Okay, Morocco, Tunisia, Algeria, Libya, Egypt. As you see right here, let me see if I can make this bigger. You guys should be able to see though. Okay, all this Morocco, Algeria, Libya, Egypt is North Africa. The Sahara Desert is right around where my mouse is moving from side to side to. And anything under my mouse is sub-Saharan Africa. It's the land of the Ethiopian. The woolly, kinky-haired black all below this. This is your area where you descend from. No, I'm sorry. This is really it. But I'm just saying, as a whole, this is where sub-Saharan, what we would call black people, come from. I don't consider Algerians black. Moroccans are not black. Libya is not black. Egypt's not black. The black folk are down here. Okay? Now, I just want to briefly go over this. This, where my arrow is, would be called the Western Hemisphere. When these East Asian type that was all around here migrated there, they went right atop of Russia, the far east, over here into Canada. You see where my mouse is? And filtered on down from Canada into the United States, down into Mexico, island hopped around here by Florida and the Caribbeans. Oops. Island hopped around here by Florida and the Caribbeans, through Mexico, Central America, and into Brazil. When European explorers came to the Western Hemisphere in these lands, that's why they called it the New World. This is the Old World. This is the Western Hemisphere called the New World, because it was new to them. They weren't saying nobody was there. They discovered. They called it the New World, and it was just and Columbus discovered it. This is water between here. Africans was not crossing these waters. They didn't have boats built to do that. Europeans didn't have boats built to do that. Nobody in the world had boats built to cross large body oceans. And I can tell you a lot about that because I was in the Navy and I went on Westpac and I've been through all these motherfucking oceans. So they called the New World because no one was there. When the Native Americans came there 15,000 years ago, just say approximately, give or take, they filtered down here where my mouse is. Before they can get in here, guess what? Canada, half the United States, half of North America. Nobody was there. It was empty. Why was it empty, Chief X? Because it was an ice age. Einstein? It was called the Laurentine Ice Sheet. Look it up. Laurentine ice sheet. This was covered in ice. You couldn't live around here on no goddamn ice move. Now, there may be some human people, but it was extremely, extremely, extremely small numbers. That's why it's always cold up here in Canada, in the north. The North Pole, Santa Claus, snow. It was cold up here. It was an ice sheet 20,000 years ago. Wasn't nobody living here at all until the Native Americans come here. Now, I make this point because I like to talk about the word indigenous. The Native Americans are indigenous to these lands. North Americans North Africans are indigenous to North Africa. I'm the one who's been saying Egyptians are Africans, Libyans are African, these Algerians and Tunisians that look like white folk are African. We're going to get to them images and pictures. Bear with me. Moroccans are Africans. They're just not black Africans. But everybody here is an African. And if they've been there for 30,000 years at least, god damn, that means you're indigenous. The Native Americans only been there 15,000 years and they indigenous. So if they was there 30,000 years, they're indigenous to the fucking land. Get over it. So, what I mean by indigenous is the Native Americans migrated up in there 15K years ago. Ice melted. They were able to navigate and get around then. They just flooded and filtered. So when you indigenous means you traveled or migrated to a land that was basically barren, nobody there, and you set up camp to never leave, and your culture is born there. So Native Americans is indigenous to this Western Hemisphere, all of it, because they set up camp there first, and their culture was born there. It's a difference when you guys talking about, I seen this such and such on this art, rock art, and it's a difference between a person migrating and traveling through a land and may have been the first. I'm not on this first person who touched the land. I'm not on that shit. Y'all be on that dumb shit. I'm talking about who set up camp and stayed and their culture was born. That's North Africans here. Sub-Saharan Africans never did that. Ever here. Like Morocco at a time was a mountainous, rocky area. Nobody wanted to live there, but people did pass through in and out of here. Okay? So North Africans, and we're going to get to their DNA, how they look and all that, are indigenous to North Africa. We are not, as tropical Africans. We're not indigenous to that area. So I'm not talking about somebody who passed through there and took a shit, you know what I mean, and drew something. You know? I'm talking about the people who set up camp and their culture was born, and that's North Africans. Over here in the Western Hemisphere, that was the Native Americans. And you know this because when you go to this Amazon in Brazil, when you go to the Amazon jungles, and they talk about them uncontacted tribes that they recently discovered, and it's still uncontacted tribes in the Amazon right now, because the Amazon is a huge, huge miles and thousands of miles area. So when they have seen and came in contact with those uncontacted people in the Amazon, they look just like similar to the rest of the Native Americans throughout the United States, Mexico, and the Caribbeans. That same look, straight hair. There is not one tribe ever found in the Amazon who has nappy, woolly, kinky hair. All their hair has been straight, and that's how you know who the people are in these lands. Okay? We were never in these lands prior to getting dropped off in a slave ship. There was no kinky, nappy, woolly-haired people in the entire Western Hemisphere until 1490, basically. None in North America, Canada, Mexico, none in the Caribbean at all, none in Brazil, nowhere, not one nappy, kinky-haired people were in these lands prior to Columbus and the slave trade. You can't find not one uncontacted tribe nappy head. And these East Asian people who they spun off from don't have nappy hair either. It's straight black hair. None of them were you. Okay. I just wanted to drop that. So I have to lay this out in a certain way where you can understand. I'm leading up to something. That's what I'm doing. I'm leading up to something, and all this is important. Okay. Let me just ask this one question. Let me just give you the answer. But who is the conscious community? The conscious community is a group of people basically who fell out the church, the black church, disenfranchised, angry, read a fucking book or two, and thought they were woke, and changed and left the church and badmouthed Christianity. So the conscious community is filled with a bunch of vagrants, angry people, paranoid people. They paranoid of the government. They paranoid of doctors, scientists. It's a bunch of kooks, quacks, crazies, and broke people, jobless people, who are just fucking mad. Who think they are still slaves and practice white supremacy, really. I don't want to get into that discussion. But when the people in 2021 is talking about let's get free, let's get liberated, that means you think you are slaves still. And your mind is still slave-minded. You embrace victimhood. You are slave-minded. If you're running around here in 2021 talking about let's get free, I want to get liberated. Let me tell you something. Chief X is free as fuck. I don't know what you're talking about. I'm different. I'm not no slave. I'm not no victim. I can do what I want, when I want, and how I want to. I can get up right now with my passport and go to anywhere in Africa. I can go to China right now and nobody will stop me. I can go to Russia right now. I can go to Australia right now and nobody will stop me. I'm free. When I lived in the suburbs, I'm in the hood now, but when I lived in the suburb, my white neighbors, my Mexican neighbors, my Indian neighbors, my Chinese neighbors, whatever they was, because it was a melting pot where I grew up with, they are no better or no special than me. I got white friends that is broker than me and doing bad. How is they freer than me because they white? What is y'all talking about in the conscious community? Get free, get liberated. Are you slaves? Jesus Christ. Oh, one more thing before I leave this point, Matt. Out of Africa migration, they migrated out of Africa, came on out here, admixed with Neanderthals and archaic humans, because yes, Neanderthals are humans, just like we are. They're just called archaic humans. They admixed with archaic humans. They changed. They mutated. They had different diets, different weather, different food. They changed. But 25,000 years, which is a long time after they migrated out of Africa, in the out of Africa theory, they landed in Australia, which is about 50,000 years, 55,000 years ago, give a fucking take. And those people who left Africa and got over here all into these islands and island hopped around here and end up in Australia and Tasmania, you know, the Tasmanian people, They still have that, like they have an archaic human look in their face because they're an old people. The original Australians and Tasmanians and some other people around these little islands, those are the people you call Aboriginal. Nobody else is called Aboriginal except these original Australians and Tasmanian people and some other people filtered around these islands. They are called Aboriginals. So when you hear the term Aboriginal in the conscious community, these people do not know what the fuck they're saying or talking about. They're using the word wrong. They don't know what Aboriginal is or what the word is meant for. They're crazy and confused, miseducated and miseducating you. So 80% of the so-called conscious community thinks Aboriginal means them. It's not meant for Africans. It's not meant for Chinese. It's not really meant for Native Americans, but they do call some Indian tribes in Canada Aboriginals. So I leave credence to them being called Aboriginal. But Aboriginal is a term for original Australians and Tasmanian people. If you didn't know, look it up. God damn. Y'all hear people say Aboriginal every fucking day, and you don't even correct them because you don't know your damn self. There's nobody in the world who should be called Aboriginal people except original Australians who got here 50,000 years ago. Before they got there, this was fucking empty. So when these people came out of Africa, they changed and mutated over the 25,000 years it took to get here. And they was all around here too and change. That's why we have different races today. You have Chinese people, you have Indian people, you have Afghanistan people, Kazakh people, Russia, Spain, France, Germany. All these people are different looking, they're different races because of evolution and changing. They are no longer considered, and we're not even, and nobody even knows. See, we get caught up on color. Okay? Actually, Neanderthals also came out of Africa 300,000 years ago. So when people hear Neanderthal, they think white people. Neanderthal ain't got shit to do with white people, Einstein. It's nothing wrong with the Neanderthal. Why do people badmouth Neanderthals? Neanderthals are the ancestors. I love them. I got point 002 in me on my DNA test. Good. It's just another archaic human like Homo erectus, Homo habilis. Homo means human. They just archaic humans. It's nothing bad. Living in a cave is a good thing and a luxury. Wherever there's caves was, anywhere in the world, humans occupied that cave if it was in your geographical area. Kenyans got caves in Kenya. Them caves is plush. Kenyans lived in caves and occupied caves. You would be stupid not to. Cave life is great in ancient times. You know what I mean? Shit. I'd rather be in a plush cave than a hut. I'm telling you. So let me get off this. Now, that's who the conscious community is. So let me just get to the meat of this. Stick with me. I just wanted to lay that groundwork so people can have understandings. And I always tell people, get a map. So when you talk about history, it can be a little clearer and more visual to you when you have a world map and you can see and understand about migrations and where people were and who's indigenous where and things like that. So let's go. Let's just read this real quick. Eurasian origins of Berbers in modern North Africans. You're not North African. You're a tropical African. You're a sub-Saharan African. And just to let you know what a sub-Saharan African is, a sub-Saharan Africa is geographically and ethnoculturally the area of the continent of Africa that lies south of the Sahara. Look, let me make this clear also. I personally consider Sudan sub-Saharan Africa. Other organizations don't and other people don't. They want to throw Sudan in North Africa. And most afrocentrics who think they're Pan-African want to put Sudan in North Africa because it's close to Egypt and then they can help steal Egypt. But I argue with people. I told them, in my opinion, Sudan is sub-Saharan Africa. I don't mind and I don't get into a petty argument if you want to consider Sudan North Africa. Fine, that's just your opinion. I don't argue, that's just too petty. Just in my opinion, I call Sudan sub-Saharan Africa. Because sub-Saharan Africa is the land of kinky-haired people in tropical Africa. This is not tropical Africa. This is desert Africans. We're not desert Africans. So you see it's a little lighter and I'm going to show you why. Okay? Because people argue with me. Oh, yeah, it is North Africa. I get what you're saying, but in my opinion and many others not. And here's the reason why. Geographical, okay, here we go. According to the United Nations, it says, it consists of all African countries and territories that are fully or partially south of the Sahara. All this green is south of the Sahara Desert, that barrier that lies south of Sahara. Where am I going to leave off at? That are partially, fully or partially south of Sahara. While the United Nations geoscreen for Africa excludes Sudan from its definition of sub-Saharan Africa. I told you. I told you. They don't really consider Sudan North Africa, although afrocentrics put it in North Africa. So it says Sudan, they exclude Sudan from its definition of sub-Saharan Africa. But Chief X and these conscious community people who claim to be Pan-African, guess what? The African Union and Chief X includes, right here it says, Sudan, but instead excludes Mauritania, which is up here where my arrow is. I put Mauritania in North Africa. Okay? So the African Union considers the Sudan and everything else, I think, is sub-Saharan Africa together. But you conscious folk trying to push Sudan into North Africa, like a SAR argued me down before, a SAR for the Amin Watch Squad. They go to Amin Watch Squad again. There's a lot of miseducation and strange shit going on. Argued me down. And he puts it in, but I don't trip on that argument. It's petty to me. If you want to think it's not. But the African Union includes Sudan as a sub-Saharan African country. Only these other people include Sudan in North Africa. I don't, and the African Union don't. Okay, we're clear? It contrasts the opposite with North Africa, which is frequently grouped with MENA, Middle East. We're going to get into all this in the Middle East or Near East and North Africa region, and most of whose states are members of the Arab League. Largely overlapping with the term the Arab world. The states Somali, Djibouti, Comoros, and the Arab majority Mauritania, which is right here where my arrow is, And sometimes Sudan are, however, geographically considered part of sub-Saharan Africa, although they are members of the Arab League as well. So basically, just because they're basically Arab and Islamic-dominated countries in North Africa, and including Sudan is Arab Islam-dominated, not Arab, excuse me, Islam-influenced. They kind of halfway still that, and because kind of a quarter of it is in North Africa, so it's just all tricky. But it just to be in general, this is what I'm saying. Okay. However, geographically considered part of sub-Saharan Africa, although they are members of the Arab League as well. The United Nations Development Performance lists 46 of Africa's 54 countries as sub-Saharan, excluding Algeria, Djibouti, Egypt, Libya, Morocco, Somalia, Sudan, and Tunisia. Okay? That's North Africa. Tunisia, Somalia, Morocco, Libya, Egypt, Algeria. That's North Africa. That's not Black Africa. Black Africa is sub-Saharan Africa. White Africa is North Africa. Not literally, calm the fuck down. But I just use those terms interchangeably to make a distinction because it says right here, it contrasts with North Africa. Basic sin is different, way different, really. Even when they named Africa, the Romans in the Mediterranean world was talking about North Africa. They really considered y'all Ethiopia all down here. They named this Africa. The Mediterranean world and Romans and Greco-Roman world named North Africa. That's what they were talking about, Africa. That's where the word comes from. So when y'all think all of Africa is yours, you're confused from your African American viewpoint. You don't have an African-centered viewpoint because you don't live in Africa. A Moroccan is the only person who can have a Moroccan worldview. Tunisian is the only person that can have a Tunisian worldview. So when afrocentrics say I have an African-centered worldview, that's impossible. You're a Black American. You can only have a Black American worldview. Nobody's worldview is bad or wrong. It's just simply their worldview. So when you have Afrocentrics try to clown you and tease you and shame you and say you have a Eurocentric worldview, they say that to try to shame you. Ask them what the fuck is wrong with the Eurocentric worldview if you had a viewpoint from a Eurocentric worldview. Is that a bad thing? No. Nobody's worldview is bad or wrong. It's just their fucking worldview. God damn. Don't let nobody shame you with that. Well, shit. I got a scientific worldview. Good. Shit. Everybody's worldview is fine and good. It's their personal worldview. Afrocentric, the whole term and wording is crazy. You can't be African-centered. Only thing you can do is like to study African history. Just say I'm a person who likes to study African history because you're not African-centered. You're American-centered, studying cultures, histories, societies, economies, and things like that. Let's make things plain and let's stop this word salad they've been throwing on y'all for a long time. I used to tell people, I used to think I was Afrocentric, but I didn't really know what Afrocentric meant until about 3 years ago. Let me tell you, you have to understand this also. So when I get on people, I always say, you Afrocentrics are deceitful. I say Afrocentrics are liars. I'm not talking about Black Power people. Black Power people don't even know what Afrocentric is. So this is how I came up. One day I'm talking, so I said I'm Afrocentric. And I just thought I was. I really didn't delve too deeply into what Afrocentrism was. at this point. They said, Chief X, you ain't African-centered. I said, what the fuck? You ain't no Afrocentric. I said, what the fuck? They were trying to clown. But I realized they was right as hell. I wasn't no Afrocentric. I'm sitting here arguing with them like I'm an Afrocentric. And Sunjetti was the one from the Almond Rock Squad told me I wasn't Afrocentric. And I thought about it after he explained it. And some months later, I realized, you know what? I'm not an Afrocentric. I'm different than you niggas. I think differently. I tell the truth. I don't steal history. I'm not a culture vulture. Because that's what Afrocentrics are. Afrocentrism came about as a fight against Eurocentrism or racism or what they would call historical racism and stuff like that. Racism and scholarship. Eurocentric racism. Afrocentric popped up to fight against that. So Afrocentrism just became Eurocentrism in blackface. Both racist. Both miseducating about history. The thing is, Eurocentrism died. They stopped bullshitting. You will never hear no Europeans in Germany, Italy, Poland, Romania, Ukraine, Sweden, Norway. You will never ever hear them people say they descend from ancient Egyptians, or you will never hear them say ancient Egyptians were white like them. They may say Caucasian, but that's different. We'll get into that also. Because Egyptians are in a way are Caucasian. I'm not saying white or European. I'm saying Caucasian. I'll use words like Caucasian or Eurasian. A person from Germany and France isn't Eurasian. They're from Europe. It's a lot of terms we got to get clear. We're going to go in and clear things up. Okay. So since probably what does it say right here? 3500 BC, the sub-Saharan, which did I say 6,000 years ago? That Sahara Desert. And people get to talk about, okay, the Sahara and the sub-Saharan regions of Africa have been what? Separated. I can enlarge this. Okay, so I hope people can see. Where did I go? Okay, since probably 3500 BC, that would mean about 6,000 damn years ago, the Sahara and the sub-Saharan regions of Africa have been separated by the extremely harsh. Remember when I said it was conducive for camels and barely habitable? Extreme, because they wouldn't cross in here. People didn't have cars and shit like that. They wouldn't just riding on horses and shit and crossing all this hot, fucking thousands of miles Sahara Desert and die. Food sources, the Sahara is deadly. If you try to cross the Sahara, it's a high chance you will die. You ought to hear Francis Ngannou's story. The heavyweight champ of the UFC, Francis Ngannou, who's Cameroon. For him to fight here in America and make it here, he was in this desert, and how many times he almost died. How they was dropped. They would at times they would a lot of Tuaregs and shit. He didn't use the word Tuaregs, but they was helping people cross, and some people was just getting dropped off for discipline and to teach them a lesson, knowing that they're gonna die. It's a lot of people dying right now all through the Sahara. It's so wide and big, nobody even knows. People get... Francis Ngannou, the Cameroonian, said how he barely was making it through the Sahara. And this is in in modern times with vehicles. You think 6,000 years, 5,000 years ago, there was people going, and when vehicles can't even do it today. Okay, so it says it was sparsely populated. Sparsely. Barely nobody was hanging fucking around in Sahara. Forming a what? Effective barrier interrupted by only the Nile in Sudan. So that's why I say that Nile River is the only reason Nubians was lucky enough to learn from, be influenced from, and build things and like that from the Egyptians because of the Nile. The rest of sub-Saharan Africa wasn't as privileged as some of the Nubians who lived along the Nile and was out of the trade. Now, I'm not talking about all the Nilotics and pygmies and all that, but the Nubians that lived along the Nile who did trade and ran up in here in other people's land, and we're going to show all that. These kinky, nappy-headed people was lucky, but you're not them. This is you over here. You're not even the Nubian. So let me just go back to the world map real quick. Right here, where you see my mouse, what was, if I can make the analogy, would be Bourbon Street in the French Quarters in Louisiana, where they party on that street. This would be Bourbon Street, where it was all cracking. That's why all the world religions and everything is all around right here, Israel and Egypt. Everybody want to be a Hebrew, an Egyptian. Everybody wants to be this. Everything cracking is right here. West Asian, the Levant, Egypt. West Asian, the Levant, Egypt. Turkey, Capsian, Egypt. All this around here, the Near East. All this, the Near East. You're going to hear these words all night. The Near East, the Levant. Oops. The Near East, the Levant, Egypt. All these people have been doing business, trading, kicking it, fighting, and doing shit for years. You sub-Saharans had nothing to do with this 30,000 years ago, all the way up to Nubian times. You guys had nothing to do with this. You weren't here. You weren't even over here 30,000 years ago. You sub-Saharans have always been down here with the kinky-haired people, the Ethiopians, and we're going to get to that. So, Israel, Egypt, the Levant, the Near East, all this, and they've been doing trade and the Eurasians and Caucasians, and all this is right here. This is where it was jumping off at. So where was I? Okay, right here. Let me re-shorten this again. Oops, that's the wrong one. Okay, here we go. Okay, so you get it? That's what a sub-Saharan African is. Okay, so let's read this. Essentially, about 10,000 years ago, how long ago? 10,000 years ago, a population wave from where? The Near East, Middle East, the Near East, where I've been talking to you, that area, that Bourbon Street where it was hot and cracking. Other areas in the French Quarter ain't cracking like Bourbon Street, although there's population around there. But Bourbon Street is a hot spot. That was a hot spot. The Near East, where Israel is now. Egypt. They was all trading and doing things, and we're going to get into all that. Here it goes. Essentially, about 10,000 years ago, a population wave from the Near East swept over North Africa. all over North Africa, swept all over North Africa, bringing in great South Mediterranean people. So people used to get mad when I said, I ain't no Egyptian, I ain't no Mediterranean, I'm a tropical African, I'm a sub-Saharan African, I ain't no Mediterranean people. These Egyptomaniacs in the conscious community has trying to get y'all to think that you are Mediterranean people. Unbelievable. Bringing in the Great South Mediterranean people in the Capsian area. Go look what the Capsian. A later wave, a second wave of immigration occurred in the Neolithic area, which is about 8,000 years ago, when the expanding farmers from where? The Near East plowed their way across North Africa, some leaving artwork in the Central Sahara to mark their passage. As far as DNA studies can tell, this is important. As far as DNA studies can tell, the Arab invasions, because people like to claim the Arabs invaded and they're the ones there and the Egyptians weren't originally, all this old bullshit. As far as DNA studies can tell, it says the Arab invasions that converted North Africans to Islam made virtually no impact on the population. Made no impact to the population. They essentially they converted the local population and didn't replace them. There was a only trace contribution made to North Africa by Europe during the Barbary slavery times, because North Africans was enslaving Europeans in the millions, just like you Africans. You ain't the only victim in history. But quite a significant amount of sub-Saharan maternal ancestry was added. They're talking about later on, the Barbary slavery times, and later on, then sub-Saharan maternal ancestry was added from through the Nubians and stuff. The modern North African is mainly Eurasian. That doesn't mean European. In ancestry, and cluster with Europeans and West Asians. West Asians, Levant, the Near East, Europeans, Eurasians, not you sub-Saharans. For the last 10,000, 30,000 years, you were not there. And to back that, what they said about the Arabs, guess what? Because I was telling people, before I get to it, I kept telling people, afrocentrics have been bullshitting people and have been giving people the impression that the Egyptians just disappeared, vanished. They never disappeared. The same people in modern Egypt today were the same people in ancient Egyptian times. They are the same people, not you. There was never a mass migration away from Egypt. There was never no mass genocide. None of that. Who you see in Egypt today, the modern day Egyptian, is who the ancient Egyptian was. And people argue it down. I said only 4,000 Arabs came into Egypt, and they did not change the population. They only changed it politically and religiously. Here we go. And this is Muslim conquest of Egypt, as you see. Crossing the Egyptian border in December 639. Basically saying they left Egypt with a force of 4,000 troops. 4,000 troops did not affect who the Egyptians was or change them at all. They basically just blended in and are the minority. It changed political hands. It didn't change the population. It was no mass migration into the population of Egypt. With a force of 4,000, most of the soldiers belonged to the Arab tribe, but Al-Kindi mentioned that 1/3 of the soldiers belonged to the Arab. Okay, whatever. Arab soldiers were also joined by some Roman and Persian because there was Romans there before that. You guys still never was. We're gonna get into that. Converts to Islam. However, Umar, the Muslim caliph, reconsidered his orders to Amir and considered it foolhardy to expect to conquer such a large country. They're telling you, how are you going to conquer such a large country as Egypt with a mere, a little bitty, it's saying, 4,000 soldiers. He wrote a letter telling them to come back. Okay? So, just to piggyback on that, I made this video. The modern day Egyptian is the ancient Egyptian. I was telling the truth. I was correct. And one of my Egyptology dude got on here and co-signed the same thing I've been saying. Right here he says, there was no genocide in the history of Egypt. It wasn't. You guys have to stop lying on Egyptians. They never disappeared. They never recorded that. It was never a mass migration out of there. They never recorded that. They recorded everything of importance. They never recorded that. They never recorded no mass genocide. If they never recorded that, if it never happened, that means the people are still there. Just like West and Central Africa was conquered by Europeans. Changing of politics. But guess what? The people are still there today. They never disappeared. Nobody disappears except people we know, like the Tasmanian people. We know genocide was committed on them. We know genocide was committed on the Native Americans. We know there was never any genocide of all. They didn't even war like that. They warred politically. They weren't as savage as y'all. There was no genocide in the history of Egypt for the indigenous population. Not even there was no civil war. Also, the occupations that Egypt went through were just replacements for the elite, not mass migrations of a foreign populations. So a lot of this changing hands, like even when the Nubians conquered Egypt until 25th dynasty, it wasn't a mass populations of migrating Nubians running all up in there flooding the country. It changed political hands and elite hands during that 25th dynasty, the Nubian dynasty. That's why they called them the Black Pharaohs. If you Google Black Pharaohs, if you put in Black Pharaohs on anywhere, the only dynasty that's going to come up is the Nubian dynasty, which was the 25th dynasty. It was the one dynasty that they had out of the whole fucking 3,000 years. And they only ruled for about 90 years out of the whole 3,000 damn years. And they called them the Black Pharaohs. So I said, use logic. If they only called them the Black Pharaohs, that means the other pharaohs of all other dynasties without the whole 3,000 years was not the Black Pharaohs. Do you understand what I'm saying? Let me get to this real quick. Let's go! Here's a serious dagger. And if your logic is off, your logic is just off. Chief X ain't gonna lie. The whole entire Mediterranean world, the Greeks, the Romans, and the Egyptians, and just about everybody, and the Nubians themselves, painted and did artwork of themselves the same fucking way. You see this head figure? It says Africans in ancient Greek art. Okay? They all painted them just like this in the similarity. And this is the kinky-haired, woolly African to the Greeks. This is the Ethiopian to the Greeks. This is the black, woolly-haired Ethiopian to the Greeks, to the Romans, and to the Egyptians. They all depicted them the same way, and I will show you. And the Egyptians aren't depicted like this. The Greeks and the Romans did not depict the Egyptians as a woolly-haired, kinky black African. This is how they depicted Africans, the Greeks in the Greco-Roman world, in the Mediterranean world. Okay? Just like this. Africans in ancient Greek art. Let's go. An investigation of black figures in classical Greek art. And just wait till I get to the end with this doctor from Ghana who's a classical, she has a PhD in the classics in philosophy. An investigation of black figures. This is how the Greeks depicted them. They depicted them exactly like the Egyptians depicted them. Exactly like the Romans depicted them. And how the Nubians depicted themselves. So you niggas in here, black Americans, you 8,000 miles away, gonna tell these people who were there, painting, looking, and living in there today, and you gonna tell them what they were and how they look. Get the fuck out of here. That's that kinky-haired, woolly black Africans to the entire Mediterranean world and the Egyptian world. I'm not no Mediterranean. You're not a Mediterranean. You're a sub-Saharan African, just like this Sudan person right here from Nubia. Whether you want to call him a Cushite, a Nubian, or whatever, it's all the goddamn same thing. This is not wordplay. This is how they depicted them. This is how the Greco-Roman, this is the Greco-Roman, and this is the black, kinky, nappy-headed African. This is the African in their artwork. They're all the same. They're always these dark, this man got his hand around his neck, this man's fighting Greeks and Romans and other Africans. This, I'm not going to go through this reading because it takes a long time. They always pitch black people. They're serving, they're entertaining, they're taming animals. And they were entertainers in the Mediterranean, Greco-Roman world, and in the Egyptian world. And we're going to get to that. Just like today, you guys are the entertainers in America. Tiptoeing and fucking shuffling and bootlicking and tap dancing and shit. This what the fuck was going on in that Mediterranean world. But they had a little more respect for them. It wasn't that kind of racism. But they did know race. And I understand race and black is a social construct and race is a social. But they weren't blind as a fucking bat. They knew differences. These were Africans. Now, woohoo, wait till I get to that. Come on, Poppy. I got a lot of screens up, so it's slow. Now, this is the Nubian village in Aswan, in Egypt. The Nubian village. Hold on. Okay. Yeah, here you go, right here. There's an article in the Nubian village. The Nubian village is in Aswan, Egypt. It's a place for displaced Nubians because their home flooded from the dam, the Aswan Dam. Their lands flooded. So they sought refuge in Egypt with another people, the Egyptians, because the Nubians were not the Egyptians. They're two different people. I hope I had to teach that. People were fight. People didn't even know that. The Nubian and Egyptian are two different people, two different languages, and all that. Two different cultures. And this is in Egypt. Why they have a Nubian village in Egypt? Because the Egyptians are not Nubians. They went to them to seek refuge because it flooded in Nubia. So watch. There are some places that will have you craving for vibrancy, and some others that give you a dash of color occasionally at the Nubian villages in Egypt. Okay, did anybody, did Ashraf Kwesi, did Dr. Ben take people to the Nubian village? Nah. They want to be Egyptians and culture vulture. They didn't go to the Nubian village. At the Nubian village in Egypt, you are greeted with the abundance of hues. The place is not randomly slashed in paint, but in fact holds meaning to the patterns and the colors. This is the Nubian village in Aswan. Pretty little colors and stuff like that. That's just how they decorate and do their thing. They are different than the Egyptians. They speak a different language. They look different. They have kinky hair. The Egyptians don't. They can't even become citizens. You can't even become a citizen unless you got an Egyptian mama and daddy. Laws have changed now. I think you only need a mama now. But it's strict. It's different. They can't even become citizens. They're stuck. They want to go back home, but they're stuck on the Nubian village. And it's a Nubian village for black, kinky-haired people because that's who the Nubians are. The Nubian village in Aswan are still flanked on the river. They are treasuries of some of Egypt's oldest ancient ruins. Residents of the village are known to be extremely friendly and hospitable. They have their own customs and traditions. They're not Egyptian customs and traditions. The Nubians have their own customs and traditions and speak their own language called Nuba. Hello. The latter is sacred to the community and thus not taught to outsiders. They keep their shit to themselves. They have kept their culture alive through generations. Those are just pictures of the Nubian village. There's a lot of camels over there. I've watched about 4 or 5 videos about the Nubian village. I actually want to go. If I go to Egypt, it's because I want to go to the Nubian village. There's much to do in this village, such and such and such and such and such and such and such. There's some little artwork of the Nubian village. And that's the Nubian village. And guess what, my people? As I showed you how the Mediterranean world, the Greco-Roman world, painted Nubians, they had their artwork just like that. Look at these masks.
Inside the house, we were served with Nubian tea and allowed to see their room and kitchen. I was told the house can be very hot during the summer, but luckily these days there are
alligators. They have a fascination for alligators, or alligator artwork, and because the alligator and the Nubian was synonymous, we're gonna get to that. We're gonna get to that.
air conditioning. Our tour also includes a house visit to the Nubian home.
Bam! Stop right there. You see these masks? That's just how these faces. That's exactly how the Greco-Roman world, the entire Mediterranean world, the Egyptians, they depicted them. They're always black like this. This is the kinky, black, woolly-haired Nubian or sub-Saharan African or Ethiopian. Not Ethiopia, Abyssinian Ethiopia. I'm talking about all of sub-Saharan Africa, but for the Mediterranean world called Ethiopia. They called North Africa, Africa. Look down here where the arrow is. Look at the depictions. They are black and dark, and they're kinky haired. You see these depictions? It was some other artwork that I just didn't have on the screen. I'm going to have to do a part 2 because there's a lot of shit I'm going to have to leave out because you guys are intellectually lazy and may not watch the whole thing.
Inside the house, we were served with Nubian
Now,
tea.
you see how they paint themselves? You see how Greco-Romans did them? The entire Mediterranean world? Now look, this is the same people. That dark-skinned, nappy-headed Nubian. This right here, where my arrow is the Egyptian. He's not a woolly-haired, black, kinky-haired African. He's a pointy-nosed, more Mediterranean, Near East, Middle East, Levant type. Although he's melanated because they're in a fucking desert. They are desert Africans in North Africa. And all of them, even the Egyptians from North Africa, all of North Africa to Egypt, have affinities with Near East, the Levant, and Eurasia, and Europe. They just do. You sub-Saharan Africans don't. These Nubians don't. They are different people. Egyptians are not black, kinky-haired people. Nubians themselves do their artwork like this. Romans, Greeks, Mediterraneans, right here. Who the fuck is you black American afrocentrics to come up in this motherfucker lying? Look at them. This is the kinky-haired, nappy African. Here's a photo where I did another video where Nubians, these black, kinky-haired, woolly-haired Africans, these Ethiopians, are paying homage and bowing down to pale North African Egyptians. It's on a video on my YouTube page. I call it buck licking. I was just being funny and extreme, but I'm just saying. Now, later on, I'm not saying that Nubians never got along with Egyptians, but I'm making a distinction and showing you the artwork and who they were and what they look like. They look like the people in them cotton fields of America. The Egyptians did not look like people in them cotton fields of America like my ancestors. Dark and black. They've been showing y'all who they are. They're getting trampled on by the North African. The desert African. These are tropical Africans. Getting banged on. I haven't told a lie yet. Are you using your logic? Now, people talk about this pre-dynastic time and try to throw themselves in that boat. Well, before the Arabs, and we already discussed the Arab thing, they didn't change the population. Oh, they whitewashed them. Well, these people that, nope. We've been showing, I'm going to show you that they've been there 30,000 years, 20,000 years, and they've been there, and y'all haven't. So we're talking about prehistory before Egypt, pre-dynastic stuff. And what does this say? The prehistory of Egypt spans the period from the earliest human settlement. Let me expand this. I don't want nobody to miss a dot. Okay, the prehistory spans from the period of earliest human settlement to the beginning of the early dynastic period around 3100 BC. That's within that 6,000 stuff in that Sahara. 3100 BC, starting with what? Pharaoh Narmer. For some Egyptologists, they say Hor-Aha. For others, with the name Menes. They use the name Menes. Menes in Narmer is said and written to be from a city called Thinis by Abydos in Egypt. Narmer was from Upper Egypt, not Sudan. And we're going to get into that trick. People have been saying Narmer comes from the south. No, he comes from Thinis. If you want to call it Menes or Narmer or whatever, they come from Thinis, which is Upper Egypt. They don't come from the south, like Sudan, like afrocentrics for decades have been trying to make you think. Okay? We're going to show you where he comes from. Now, let me just show this real quick. Is that on the other page? Right here is Queen T. I'm gonna get to something else. I just want to get to this while it's on my mind. People for years have always acted like this is her afro, or she had an afro. It's not a fucking afro. Most Egyptologists know this. Most folks, Egyptomaniacs, know this because they study it. They just lie and act like it and play it off to you. It's a fucking headdress and a wig. It's not hair. You see right here, this used to be an uraeus. Where these two, you see, where these two things, you can take this wig off, this headdress off. Queen T was not black. This is Queen T right here, the mummy. She has North African hair. She has straight hair. It's a little curly, but she has straight hair. She does not have tightly coiled, woolly hair. They've been lying to you. This is Queen T's hair. She is not a woolly-haired black African. She's a North African. Her affinities and DNA is of the same stock. The Levant, the Near East, Egypt, around in that area. They have been there for 30,000 years. Bourbon Street, bitch. They've been partying. And this is what she would kind of look like. With this same hair in person, but dead. A North African. Y'all don't know what North Africans look like after this time? Get a fucking map. Queen T did not have kinky, nappy hair. They lied to you. That is a headdress that she has in that picture, in this picture. And it's just on wood, so all you see is melanin, and you think it's black because somebody's melanated. Now, right here, I just wanted to show this real briefly. This is they have different kind of crowns and headdress. I got into an argument with her. I'm an Ra Squad member. And you know how Sarah student said he used to show the head, like the ancient Egyptians had waves and shit. Like they actually had brushes and wave caps and shit. But Sarah student shit, he just always show these pictures. Look, they had waves and shit. They were just striations, curling, whatever. It was a cap crown with a uraeus. The uraeus was just broken off, and it was a cap crown. It's basically a skull cap. It's headdress. It's a skull cap. The cap crown, it says, is usually plain or decorated with horizontal lines or with circles. The cap crown bears the uraeus. Those were not waves. It was a cap crown. And all this time, Afrocentrics and especially Egyptomaniacs, they knew it was a cap crown because they delved deep into this, but they hid it from you. They wanted you to keep thinking, because these Afrocentrics are deceitful, they wanted you to keep thinking it was hair waves. You can kind of see the lines in it right here. They were not waves and no black people. Now, I'll get into that later. It was attested to that they were the cap crowns in early Egypt. It jumped back off on the 25th dynasty, ironically. So, the black pharaohs. But, yeah. So, this is what I want to go to. Prehistory. So, when you're talking about prehistory and Narmer and shit like that, check this out. Because they lying about Narmer. They be lying about Narmer. Ooh, they be lying about Narmer. And I got to show this brief clip so you can understand about Narmer means or Thinis. Narmer comes from Thinis, Upper Egypt. To those who don't know, when you say Upper Egypt, it means southern Egypt in a way. It's just backwards. When you say Lower Egypt, that means northern Egypt. I'm just saying that for the people who may not understand and get it. So I have a video right here. I said Narmer from the south misrepresented by Afrocentrics. That's the title, right? So I have another video right here. It says Egyptians coming from the south BS exposed. So let me just play a brief clip of this and listen. Okay. Let's shut this. The Egyptians came from the south bullshit down. Because people are playing games with this. They came from the south shit. And I'm going to tell you what they're doing. Okay? We're going to kill this shit. Okay? Here's Egypt. Let me see if there we go. Here's Egypt. Okay? This would be considered Lower Egypt and Upper Egypt. Down. It's backwards. Okay. Here's Egypt. This would be Lower Egypt. All around here. Upper Egypt will come down here around, let me keep my, here we go. Around here. Okay? When people are saying from the south, they're trying to make you think that they came from the south, like down here in Sudan. They're bullshitting you. This is Egypt. All of Egypt. They were all the same from here, from Lower Egypt to Upper Egypt, right about here, where it says, Ombo. Okay? That's where it was. This was right here around where my pen is, was a city called Thinis, where Narmer, aka means MENES, however people pronounce it, or Narmer, however you pronounce it, came from here. Thinis. The first before Narmer, they say it was a scorpion king. Came from Thinis. Right down here, right here. Not down here. You can fact check all this. I love it. Fact check anything I spit today. Thinis. They trying to play you. But here is south. This is from the south according to up from here. North, south. They came from the south, still Egypt. These were the same people, brother and sister. Upper Egypt, Lower Egypt. Lower Egypt, Upper Egypt. Lower Egypt, Upper Egypt. Same fucking people. Same people been living and migrating around here. They were just brothers and sisters. One got pissed at the other one, and they united it into one. It was never the Sudan people. Down here. When they say they came from south, they are not talking about here. They're not talking about down here. Stop letting these people fuck you. They're talking about right around here. From the south. The city of Venice is right here. It doesn't say on this map, but look it up. Venice is right around here. And they united. They wasn't coming from down here, and they say they come from the south because people know south of Egypt is Sudan. So they're trying to mind game you and act like they came from this dark people, the Sudanese people, or the Nubians, or the Cushites, or whatever the fuck you want to call them. That's not from south where they're talking about. They're talking about here. Cut these mind games out playing with people. Now, I paused it. Then on top of that, to double down with another dagger, after Narmer from Thinis, right here, not here, after Narmer from Thinis united the two lands, these brothers and sisters, same fucking stock, same DNA, same people that's been around, floating around here forever. After Narmer means, whatever you want to call them, united these two. See, Thinis, where Narmer came from, is in the middle between North and the Sudan border. It's in the middle. It's not down here. But after he united the two lands, guess what he did? He turned around, made a U-turn, and banged on the Nubians. That's a fact. Everyone had to admit that when I was on SaNeter, but no afrocentric tells that truth. Narmer turned around and banged on the Nubians and led military expeditions into Nubia. Banging on these motherfuckers. Everybody knows that's the truth. I am not lying. But why didn't they tell you and teach you that? So Narmer did not turn around and bang on his own people because he didn't come from here. He was banging on a different people. He was banging on the Ethiopian. Not the Abyssinian Ethiopian modern time. I'm talking about the sub-Saharan African. Narmer turned around. He turned his North African, Levant, Near East ass around and gang banged on the nappy, kinky, woolly head. Nappy, kinky, woolly head Africans. He didn't turn around and lead military expeditions on his own people. They were a different people. A people who the Egyptians called in many several writings a vile and wretched barbarian people. The Mediterranean world, the Greco-Romans, considered a barbarian an Ethiopian, an uncivilized. The kinky-haired woolly person is who the Egyptian, the straight-haired person, the North African, they called these people, the Nubians, vile and wretched. You can look that up. Everyone knows this. But do Afrocentrics teach this truth? No, because they want to be Egyptians. They about white supremacy and Afrocentrism, racism, culture vulture people stuff. Stealing all this. They ain't got their ass in West Africa talking that. They all up here in other folks' fucking business. Lying about Narmer coming from the motherfucking south. When he came from the south of Cairo, in the middle, he ain't come from the South Sudan, you liars. Shit. And here we go with this ancient Egyptian race theory. It goes into the origins of it, but it was one point I wanted to make. They talk about you Afrocentrics and Shakka Ahmose. And who started this bullshit? Shakka Ahmose I'm talking about. Y'all leaning on this Shakka Ahmose thing. Come on. Well, Shakka Ahmose went to UNESCO in 1974 and proved this. He didn't prove a motherfucking thing. They disagreed with him. The only people agreed was afrocentrics, which turned into the conscious community in this small circle. Didn't nobody agree? They didn't agree with him. He did a melanin test, and people have been acting like it was some DNA test. You know what a melanin test is? That's like me. Say two people died. One was Sarah Sudan Seti, light-skinned nigga, and another one was an Southeast Asian from Thailand. They do a melanin test on a Southeast Asian, a Thailand person, and do a melanin test on Sarah Sudan Seti. Guess who's gonna show they darker and the most melanin? The motherfucker from Thailand. Does that mean the person from Thailand is African? Why don't you guys correct this shit? All these false alluding to shit y'all do. And then on top of that, you can't even find the melanin test results. No goddamn way. Y'all been lying for a long time. Look what it says right here. It says decipher murder. In 1974, the black hypothesis met with what? Profound disagreement by scholars. These weren't whites. These weren't people trying to lie. These are people trying to get it right. White folk at that time They had stopped that Eurocentrism shit. Now with some racism going on, but they wasn't into this Eurocentrism, and they wasn't claiming Egypt. They were saying it wasn't white or black. It wasn't the white man's or it wasn't the black man's. It was the North Africans. White folk been telling you that. Only black Americans is still into the theft and lies. In today's 2021, only black Americans, the conscious community, is into the bullshit and lies still, and still into historical racism. Eurocentrism been dead and stopped that bullshit. Because these scholars today have jobs. They're writing journals. Scientific journals. They trying to be right. They not trying to ruin their career. They ain't trying to put out no bullshit today. Because they'll get checked by other scholars. They keeping shit on point. It's you niggas is lying. It's you niggas who ain't in no goddamn journals. Let me find this real quick. Real quick. Okay, let me just go into something else. Okay. So, we're back here. And we're going to get to the meat of this thing. We're going to get to the final proof in these nails by this Ghanaian classics PhD. And she's going to break it down. She's from Ghana. And I chose her because she knew what she was talking about. She did her dissertation on exactly what I've been saying for the last year. You guys are about to be in your feelings. Okay, so we read this earlier. It's talking about the Arab invasions that converted North Africans to Islam made virtually no impact on the population. They didn't disappear, y'all. Modern Egyptians today are the ancient Egyptians. Basically, if you want just in general sense, common, about 67% of the modern day Egyptian today is exactly what the ancient Egyptian was. About 67%. Times have changed and there's been some mixing and people coming around. You know, the Coptics speak the closest thing to the Egyptian language. It's no nappy-haired, kinky-haired people. No any Coptic. They don't speak Coptic. You're not gonna find no nappy-haired, kinky Coptic. As far as DNA studies can tell, okay. Berbers are located primarily in the northern regions of Algeria and Morocco. You don't hear nobody saying Algerian power, Morocco, Tunisia. You don't see nobody in the conscious community capping for that. They only capping for Egypt. That's the only country in North Africa they capping for is Egypt. Why is that? Because they know they're not the Berbers. They know they're not the North African. They can only halfway try to steal Egypt. And because a lot of the artwork y'all see in Egypt, a lot of the artwork the conscious community and afrocentrics have put out was statues and artwork of the 25th dynasty, the Black Pharaohs, that 100-year period out of 3,000-year period. And those pictures are flooded on the internet. They're flooded all over your social media. So all you think you seeing Egyptians, but no, you looking at Nubians who were just reigning at the time. So their artwork is still there. Their statues are still there. So what you've been seeing a lot of times you thought was a black nappy-headed African was just a Nubian from the 25th dynasty. That was the only dynasty. You've been confused and brainwashed by afrocentrics. Berbers are believed to have their ancestors among Caspian Mesolithics and their Neolithic descendants. Neolithic, think about 8,000 years. Possibly with genetic contributions from the important Neolithic migrations from where? The Near East. You always gonna keep hearing about this Near East, the Levant. It is reasonable to hypothesize that the Berber Afrocentric language, the Nubian, Sub-Saharan don't have Afrocentric language. They don't even know nothing about it. It's just a totally different language. Well, introduced by the Neolithic farmers. Anyway, this page has a few links to DNA studies. No, this is a blog, Matilda's blog. I really like it because she comes at Afrocentrics. Okay, these are pictures of Africans, indigenous Africans, indigenous North Africans, been there forever. Abstract, the process by which pastoralism and agriculture spread from the Fertile Cloud crust over the past 10,000 years has been the subject of intense investigation by genetics, linguists, and archaeologists. Let me just go down further. This is an African. I told you, all Africa is not black Africa. It never has been. North Africa is white Africa and has been. But I don't mean pale white, but she's one of the paler ones. She's a Tunisian. Tunisians are a little more paler than Algerians and Moroccans and Egyptians and Libyans. But they have a lot of Eurasian mitochondrial DNA. Tunisian Berbers. Berbers live in groups scattered across North Africa whose origins and genetic relationships with their neighbors are not well established. The first of the mitochondrial DNA control region was sequenced in a total of 155 individuals from 3 Tunisian Berber groups and compared to other North African. Anyway, okay. But it just goes on to say, you guys can read this on your own. I'm not into the genetics. I hate to really talk about DNA because it's not my lane. I just give you the basics. But when you talk about Berbers, you'll always hear the conscious community jump to the Tuareg. And I did a presentation, one of my coldest presentations was on the Tuareg. The Moors, the Tuareg exposed. And I showed people Tuareg, the original white Tuareg, had black slaves. Now they were a darker of the Berber clans, but they were an outlier. And I found something that I said the same thing. The principal components of the coordinate lattice show that some Berber groups, and one of them is the Tuareg, the Mozabite, and the Shini Doret, however you pronounce it, are outliers within the North African genetic landscape. So out of all of North Africa, just these small, tiny little groups are outliers, meaning they're rare. They're a little darker than the other Berbers because they had a little, they was running through the Sahara Desert. And they was like a go-between people. They was like the gangsters of the deserts and shit. You had to go through them to do a lot of trade and shit. So they would do a lot of trading with the sub-Saharan Africans in between them and the North Africans. So the Tuareg looked dark because they took on a lot of sub-Saharan African concubines and slaves. And those concubines and slaves became part of the Tuareg family. They became part of the Tuareg Berber family. So they're dark. And for generations, they had generations and generations of them. And these were their concubines, like wives, but they did low work, slave labor, the hard work. And their children was born slaves. They were born servants. And then 100 years after that, their children, they were born servants. So you'll see a lot of sub-Saharan African-looking people hanging with the Tuaregs. But what did it say? They're outliers. That's why the conscious community and afrocentrics gravitate and always say the Tuareg, them are outliers. They want to hang on to a thread. See, this is an African. This is an indigenous African. This is an indigenous African. The genetics studies have emphasized the contrast, the difference between North African and sub-Saharan populations. Y'all are sub-Saharans. Y'all are tropical Africans. You're not desert Africans. This is a desert African. This is a desert African. This is a desert African. These are North Africans. You guys are not North Africans and never been. What is this sub-Saharan fact? But the particular affinities of North African Mtd pool to that of Europe, the Near East, and sub-Saharan Africa have not previously been investigated. Wait, did I read that wrong? Wait a minute. Genetic studies has emphasized the contrast between North African and sub-Saharan populations, but the particular affinities of the North African mtAD DNA pool to that of Europe. The Near East and the Sub-Saharan have not previously been investigated. We have analysis such and such and such. I got ant on me. These are modern day North Africans. These are Africans. They're just as African as a Ghanaian, as a Nigerian, as a person from the Congo. They are just as African. They are just as indigenous. They're just not Black Africa. North Africa has never been Black Africa. So I'm just get to this conclusion. Widely human complete. Suggest West Asian, just like I said, West Asian, the Levant. This is one of the conclusions. The most probable origin of the Proto-U6 lineage was the Near East around 30,000 years ago, and it spread to North Africa, where it represents a signature of regional continuity. 30,000 years, 20,000 years, them North Africans has always been there. They spread from the Near East, the Levant. They're indigenous, just like Native Americans are indigenous. And again, returning to the Eastern Paleolithic times, derivative. Let me see. It was a lot of back. Let me get to this real quick. One second. I still haven't got to the meat. It's just so much to cover and I wanted to talk about. Y'all can take a couple days to watch this video. It doesn't bother me, but I'm doing it. Where is it says right here, North Africa, Maghreb or Western North Africa on the whole is believed to have been inhabited by Berbers since 10,000 BC. This is before the Sphinx, before the pyramids, all that. While the eastern part of North Africa, what they talk about Egypt, or the Nile Valley, has been mainly home to the Egyptians. They're just a little different. In the east of northeast Africa, ancient Egyptians record extensive contact with the Western Desert, where people appear to have been Berber or Proto-Berber. Now, this is what I want to get to too, real quick. They talk about this prehistoric time, and I got off track. Pharaoh and armor and things like that. Neolithic period. Naquata 3, you see right here, Naquata. Okay? This is Naquata art. This is not Nubian art. So, you talk about pre-dynastic times, and guess what was going on in pre-dynastic times? Gerzean culture, 35 BC to 3200 BC. Guess what it says? During this period, distinctly foreign objects in art forms entered Egypt, indicating contact with several parts of what? Asia! This is in pre-dynastic times. They've always been there. They've always been fucking with each other. Not the Nubians, not the kinky nappy-haired Ethiopians, not the kinky woolly-haired African. With several parts in Asia, particularly with Mesopotamia. Objects such as Gebel El Arik knife handle, which has patently Mesopotamian relief carvings on it, have been found in Egypt, and the silver which appears in this period can only have been obtained from Asia Minor. Asia, West Asia. In addition, Egyptian objects were created with clearly mimic Mesopotamian forms. Cylinder seals appeared in Egypt as well as recessed painting architecture. The Egyptians' relief on cosmic palettes were made in the same style as the contemporary Mesopotamian Uric culture, and ceremonial mace heads from the late Gerzean and early Sumerian were crafted in the Mesopotamian pear-shaped style instead of the Egyptian native style. These people have been fucking with each other for a long time around Bourbon Street. Not with y'all, but we're gonna get to that. Let's just go to some of these old cultures. In the pottery. They even had, that wasn't the one I wanted to show. Okay, another prehistoric culture. What did it say about them? Well, let me just get you the years so you can understand. The Budu Mahdi culture, pre-dynastic. Mahdi was occupied between 3900 and 3500 BC. Roughly contemporary with Nakata 1 and 2. Upper Egypt, which means round thinnest. And guess what? They had few bifacially worked tools, unlike preceding Neolithic cultures, but circular scrapers and one Canaanite blade imported from where? Palestine. The Near East, the Levant, Palestine, West Asia. They've been fucking around pre-dynasty. Pre-dynastic period. Upper Egypt. They're talking about stuff found. Okay, so let me get to this real quick, and we're about to finish it up with the meat. Okay, so let me find it first. Okay, dokie. Here we go. Now, this is what I'm going to break down who the Ethiopian was, what the Greco-Roman world called kinky-haired woolly people, what the Egyptian called kinky-haired woolly people, what they were doing in the lands in the Greco-Roman Mediterranean world, what they were doing in Egypt and things like that, how they treated them. This is deep. This is this is the lady's thesis. Doctor of Philosophy, Classics, Dr. Gifty Oko Adonvo. She has a BA honors, University of what? Ghana. She has an MA, McMaster University. This is her supervisor, and this is how many pages it is. Okay. Just to let you know a little about. Yes, woman, where's that? Okay, here we go. Here the author is in her dissertation. Just want to let you know who she is. People, this is a real scholar. This is her. Giti Oko, she's a Ghanaian. Major credentials. Um, she's been all over the world. She also has held leadership in teaching positions at University of Maryland College, University of Illinois. She earned her PhD in 1999 in classical studies, the perfect credential for what I'm talking about. From Macassar University, MA Classical Studies, 1992 from Maryland University, BA Classics English Laws from University of Ghana. She is well studied and credentialed in basically art history and the classics. You know what I mean? So let's really, where's it at again? Get into what she talking about. And this is the final dagger. So this lady's amazing. I don't know how I ran across her. Okay? But she has compiled in her thesis, I guess for her doctorate to graduate, this thesis, and it's very deep. It has been what they call peer reviewed, passed, scored high on. She got a crazy table of contents, just crazy information in this thesis. And I was like, go ahead, girl. So we're going to get into it real quick in a bit. So it's called Studies in the Iconography of Blacks in Roman Art. She goes into Greek art, Hellenistic art, Roman art, Egyptian art, Nubian art. It's just very detailed, and as you can, if you can see, you can kind of read this, the table of contents and things. But let me get to my point. Y'all can't see me, but I got my notes. I'm trying to find a particular note. So she got major sources. Oh, this is the major sources. So we're going to get to it. Hold on. Okay. This is the introduction. Many barbarian, an example, non-Roman types are represented in Roman art. So to Romans, they considered a barbarian also an Ethiopian or woolly-haired African. In Roman art, Gauls, Germans, Dacians, Parthians, Scythians are only a few of those that occupied the Roman artists who took great care to differentiate Romans from barbarians. But all of the barbarian types non-seems to have challenged the artistic imagination like the black African, who must have aroused considerable interest because of his or her somatic difference from the Roman. The iconography developed for a black African physiognomy in Greek art was adopted by Roman artists. So Greco-Roman art in their depiction of the black woolly-haired African was very similar and similar to the European. They all the same, and even the Nubian, the Cushite, the black nappy-hooded Ethiopian paints himself and does his artwork of himself in the same way. The iconography developed for a black African in Greek art was adopted by the Roman artists, who expanded upon it by reinventing it and extending its application to other black or dark-skinned peoples like Indians and Moors. Previous scholarship has focused on the role of blacks in race relations between blacks and Greeks and Romans. My approach to the study of iconography of the black is to examine the ways in which artists of the Roman period confronted the problem of representing perceived difference from their own Semitic norm image and the context in which they did that. It becomes clear that the artists were frequently confused as to the precise nature of that somatic difference, especially with regard to differences among various dark-skinned peoples. Although the monuments are the main focus of study in this thesis, the evidence of ancient literary testimony is also considered because it provides a complementary tradition to the images and in many instances furnishes a much needed context for the understanding of the artistic evidence. In conjunction with iconography, it ultimately contributes valuable insights into the society that produced the monuments. So she's basically saying this is just written record, artwork, and stuff from the Greco-Roman world and how they presented things and considered what blacks would look like in art, basically. Okay, I can't go through this whole thing, so I'm just going to briefly go through this and just stop at some important parts that I think are important. Since the late 19th century, there has been an interest in the theme of blacks during the Greek and Roman periods. Research of the topic was concerned with specialized aspects of the iconography of blacks, but there existed no monograph which covered the whole period until G.S. Beardley's thesis in 1922, blah, 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 blah. It was a groundbreaking study in the field of iconography of blacks in the ancient Greco-Roman art. It assembled material from restricted corpora, but put together by early scholars, and from what had hitherto been scattered. Just skip on. One troubling aspect of the scholarship is its racially prejudicial overtones, which become particularly evident when, for example, she employs phonological criteria in a In the case, okay, here we go. In these cases, the author makes assessments like an extremely naturalistic portrait of an African of the lowest type of intelligence, and the characteristic features of the race are admirably rendered, including the woolly hair, protuberant forehead, thick lips, an indescribable nigger grin. Another problem another problem is that of terminology. For example, although Beardsley provides definitions for the terms Ethiopian and Negro so as to avoid what she considers the misleading practice of other scholars who employ the two labels interchangeably. She herself falls into the same misleading practice. The basic premise in the work is that the iconography reflects scornful and condescending attitudes towards blacks that arose because blacks functioned as slaves in Greek and Roman society. Now, a lot of times she's going to be quoting different authors and scholars, but in a way she's arguing about racism in art. And I can't touch on it all because it's too lengthy and I'm about to finish up. And in some places, she talks about racism argued between different Europeans, and they seeing it different. But she gets to the point. She bases this on the frequent occurrence of the black in the minor arts, for the great sculptors did not consider him a sufficiently dignified or important subject. Beardsley's reading of the literary sources also seems to support the premise, since she ignores references of more positive nature. Therefore, whilst the discussion of Greek sources centered mainly on poetical references to a mythical Ethiopia, they use this term mythical Ethiopia because a lot of the Greco-Roman world didn't go beyond the borders of Egypt to this mythical Ethiopia, or sub-Saharan Africa. Poetical references to this mythical Ethiopia located at the ends of the earth. Some sources of the later period and Roman references dealt with topics of skin color, physiognomics, and social commentary on blacks. This reveals differences between attitudes expressed by Greeks and Romans towards black. The author argues that in Greece, due to the rarity and unusual appearance of the black, so they didn't see the black or didn't consider the Egyptian to be the black or see them as anyway alike or kinky haired or woolly haired. The Romans and Greeks, as I go through this, didn't consider the Egyptians to have woolly kinky hair. They considered them very different than the sub-Saharan or the Ethiopian, which they called it. There was a literary idealizing of the subject that does not exist in the Roman area. Okay. Let me just move on. I'm going to skim through this. So one of these guys is arguing modern day discussions of Egypt and blacks are usually fraught with controversies. Okay, so Greece's association with blacks in Egypt are expressed in various things, including those of a black youth being attacked by a crocodile. So remember in Nubia, I was telling you about crocodile. Remember that? Black youth being attacked by a crocodile, and black priests and attendants of the Egyptian king Burrs being slain by Heracles. That the Romans also perceived the black as a nilotic. Now you guys should know what a nilotic is. Like if I say a pygmy, not pygmy, like them tall Maasai, these are considered nilotics. The Romans also perceived the black as a nilotic is evident in the popular nilotic landscapes featuring pygmies, as well as in Egyptianizing scenes with black Isaic celebrants. According to Leclerc, the nilotic associations of the black were emphasized because the black was of a physical type so different from Greeks and Romans that he was a perfect symbol of an Egypt that itself seems so exotic. Leclerc argues that Egypt was an exporter of black slaves and African products, such as ivory, precious wood, ostrich plums, skins, live wild animals. Some of these, according to him, may have been brought by Saharan tribes in the Roman period into Egypt via Meroe and Axum, addressing question of the origin of black slaves in Greece. And at Rome, Leclerc admits that information on the subject is inadequate, but puts forward a theory that centers of export of black slaves shifted from one country to another during the Hellenistic, Roman, and Christian era. He does not specify which countries had these centers of exports. Leclerc touches on Alexandrian art, a subject he deems under-researched due to as much of the abuse of the Alexandrian art, which is mostly a catch-all phrase to the problematic nature of the subject. He notes rightly, however, that the themes of Nilotic scenes, pygmy battles, and Nilotic hunt scenes, so popular in Greco-Roman art, were derived from Egyptian art and mythology, as are Isaic scenes with blacks participating in the ceremonies. Now I'm just reading each page I marked just to brief it. The ancient monuments contained many representations that are clearly attempts by the artists of the Greco-Roman period to create images of persons of recognizable to a greater or lesser degree as black Africans. Such images are distinct because artists have identified somatic traits that they perceive as different from their own somatic norm, exactly Greco-Roman somatic norm, and reproduce them in the monuments. The degree of difference from the somatic norm depends on the number of distinguishing somatic characteristics that the artist has decided to stress. The iconographic evidence, probably as a result of experimentation with various combinations of distinct somatic characteristics, contain portrayals that appear to be representative of a range of black and dark peoples. The somatic norm image appears to have been a Mediterranean type of Caucasian physiognomy, consisting of pale brown skin, dark straight or curly hair, dark eyes, medium to thin lips with little eversion and prominent nose. That norm appears in the numerous images of emperors, empresses, ordinary people, mythical figures, and deities that constitute Roman figural art, and even the idealization that is typical of images of deities, heroes, and heroines, and some rulers do not part from the somatic norm to any great extent. They basically stand as a norm. Um, 40. Wait a minute. She says, I employ several terms to describe representations of racial types. Some of the terms will be used interchangeably. This is a response to the fluid nature of the concept of the black in antiquity, as well as the changing applications of racial labels in our time. I have avoided the term African in order to not conflate its ancient and modern applications, for while it's presently used to refer to sub-Saharan Africans particularly, and to other peoples of the continent more generally, in the Roman context, its use was far more restricted, referring only to provincials of North Africa. So the term African, in order not to conflate and confuse things, it was far more restricted, referring only to provincials of North Africa. When they spoke of Africa, it was for North Africa. I use the terms Black African, Ethiopian. So that's what I use. I use Black African because I don't consider North Africa Black Africa. I guess she feels the same. Ethiopian and Black to describe the appearance of figures that show all or several of the somatic characteristics outlined earlier. Because the term Negro and Negroid have been used interchangeably in previous scholarship to describe images representing the black, I too employ those terms when I quote previous researchers. For example, I may note that Beardsley identifies a representation as that of a Negro, but in discussing the image, I was subsequently referred to as a representation of the black. The term black is applicable to figures described by other researchers as Negro. Negroid and pygmy, when they do not show a divergence from the Semitic norm, Negro is identified as a member of a group of human populations either derived from or autochthonous to Africa south of the Sahara, excluding groups recently migrated. Somebody said keep up the good work. Excluding groups recently migrated from Europe or Asia. The general characteristics of the Negro populations are a dark skin, woolly hair, thick lips, a short and broad nose, a protruding lower part of the jaw, prognathicism. They don't refer to this to Egyptians as dark skin, woolly hair in ancient Mediterranean world. The hair of the Negro is actually tightly curled, forming small spirals, but is inappropriately and frequently described as woolly. Negroids share several features of Negroes. Negroid groups include types referred to traditionally anthropologically as Nilotic, Hamitic, or Nilo-Hamitic. They are described as having less tightly curled hair. Excuse me. Okay, what they said, they call some people who are dark Negroids. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Negroid groups include types referred to in traditional anthropology as Nilotic, Hamitic, and Nilo. They are described as having less tightly curled to almost straight hair, black or bluish black skin, reduced or absent prognathicism, reduced whatever, and lips not as thick and everted as in Negroes. Pygmies are Negroids of a very short stature. It is important that they be distinguished from clinical dwarfs who have larger heads, limbs disproportionate to torso, and protruding buttocks, characteristics of clinical condition of such and such. Somatic norms have been represented. Snowden has identified some adjectives as representations of multiracial persons, describing these figures interchangeably as Negro, mulatto, or quadroon. For example, the 3rd BC bronze statue of a jockey of such and such, Artesium, but that figure has none of the defining elements signifying difference from the Semitic norm. In most cases, the question at the outset of analysis should not be whether a figure is a representation of a real black or of a mixed black, but rather what is the artist showing us in a particular figure. For what the viewer is confronted with is an artist's attempt to convey the notion of a figure that is different from the Semitic norm, and as will become clear later in my discussion, frequently without precise knowledge of the nature of the difference. Summary of ancient literary evidence relating to black. Summary of ancient literary evidence relating to blacks from the 6th century, 6th BC. This is, I guess, a Greek writing for Ethiopian. Ethiopian appear in Greek literary sources as a distinct non-mythological person. The development appears to have been coincidental with increased Greek activity in Egypt, as well as some limited exploration of the regions beyond Egypt that would have provided some measure of contact with Ethiopia. The Roman era, however, had the advantage of increased contact due to imperial expansion. So when Romans imperially expanded beyond the borders of Egypt, they had contact with this woolly-haired people. However, had the advantage of increased contact due to imperial expansion, and this contact is borne out by references in the literary sources to Ethiopians in a Roman context, rather than to generalize Ethiopia in an Ethiopian homeland, as appears to the Greek sources. Okay, you guys get the point. Let me just keep rolling because I got to go to bed. Greek tradition. The importance of the term Ethiopia is that the post-Homeric usage appears to have been in reference to human groupings that can be identified in our day as Black Africans or blacks. So that term Ethiopia was for Black Africans or blacks, not Egyptians. The etymology of the term Ethiopia is from such and such, I can't read that Greek, meaning burnt. They're basically just telling you what you guys already know, that Ethiopian means burnt face. The etymology of the Ethiopia is from the meaning burn, meaning visage or face, hence Ethiopian burnt face. It becomes clear that this term applies to a person of very dark complexion, dark beyond the Greek somatic norm. When we observe that the term is applied to persons who are non-Greek, barbarian, Ethiopian, and several other screens I showed you, they're talking about barbarians as a sub-Saharan, and who, in addition to dark skin color, also have other somatic characteristics distinguishing themselves from the somatic norm. One can reasonably infer that from this, such Ethiopian referred to a black person. The color of skin of Ethiopian is described by Black Herodotus, who is the earliest Greek source that attributes a skin color. Ethiopians mention of their black skin color is also made of Diodorus. And Aristotle describes the complexion of Ethiopian as black, blacker than that of any other people. Aristotle's description is particularly valuable because it reveals an awareness of degrees of darkness and complexion. Implicitly acknowledges that other groups have dark skin and make a distinction between the blackness of those groups and the blackness of Ethiopians. So there's a difference. So they're talking about people beyond Egypt's border. The Ethiopians, the sub-Saharan African. Between black skin, okay, was I supposed to read this one? Okay. Okay, here we go. Between black skin color and Ethiopian, in fable, the fables ascribed to Aesop, a man buys an Ethiopian slave, and being ignorant of the fact that the slave's dark skin color was not due to unhygienic habits, attempts to wash the color off to no avail. The proverb Ethiopian something, meaning to wash an Ethiopian white, or the futility of a labor, shows the intrinsic connection made between blackness of skin and Ethiopia in ancient popular view. They were aware of the differences in what they considered people. In addition to skin color, the sources comment of the hair, Ethiopia, which is described as being different from that of other peoples. The tightly curled hair of Ethiopia was usually likened to wool and described as, I can't read that, but it's basically saying woolly. In his description of the Ethiopian, aka the sub-Saharan, allies in Xerxes' army, Herodotus distinguishes between the straight hair of one type of Ethiopia and the woolly hair of the other. And also describes the hair Ethiopian as woolly hair. They don't describe Egyptians as woolly hair ever anywhere. Diodorus and they were in the land. indicate that a flat nose has other distinguished physiological features of. Okay, let me move on. And let me go ahead and kind of end it, but wait a second. It's just so much to read. I can't spend all day in reading this whole thing, but let me just get to one of my last points. I'm trying to think this is on page 81. Okay. Worship and celebrating temples. The black hunters, the bow, in Ethiopian landscape are clearly differentiated. Excuse me. The black hunters in Ethiopian landscape are clearly differentiated from the figures in the Egyptian landscape by their black color and their costume of short white garments resembling the exomis. So, Greco-Roman world is basically saying the black hunters, the Ethiopian landscapes, are clearly differentiated from the figures in the Egyptian landscape by their black color and their costume of short white garments. Okay. Several motifs of the mosaic had already appeared in Greek art of the 6th century. The motifs of hunters attacking a crocodile, the Nubians. Remember the crocodile and Nubian? Shown in the upper portion of the mosaic also remains popular in Nilotic scenes and can be associated with the earlier motif of the black youth being attacked by a crocodile in the Crocodile and the Boy group vase, attributes to such and such and such. Okay, so I just kind of wanted to show you that the Greco-Roman world and the Egyptian world depicted the black, nappy-headed, woolly person the same. The Greco-Roman world, in their writings and in their art, and if you can ever read this, the iconographic of blacks in Roman art, they didn't consider the Egyptians to have kinky hair. They only considered the Ethiopian, the sub-Saharan African, or the Nubian to have kinky hair. You guys are not the North African. I don't know what kind of proof you need. Now, here is even, let me just go to this, hold on, and just close it. But anyway, Nubians speak an Eastern Sudanic language. Egyptians speak an Afro-Asiatic language. They're different people, cultures, different looks. The Nubian is not the North African. The Nubian is in the sub-Saharan group, to me, considered to be a sub-Saharan African. They were, as I showed earlier, in Sudan and Nubia, the only sub-Saharan group of kinky-haired, woolly people. They were able to bypass the Sahara and use the Nile Valley River to enter into North Africa and do business, trade, slave work, and all that in Egypt, and then eventually in Roman and the Greco world. In the Roman and Greco world, I wish I could continue, they tell you that the jobs that Ethiopians or nappy, woolly-haired, kinky people had were more so as entertainers. They did the lowly work, and they fucked with animals and tamed them, and they were good at that. This is throughout the Greco-Roman and Egyptian world, and you niggas in Black America got the audacity to think you know more than the Greco-Roman world, the Egyptians themselves. You are not the Egyptian. You don't descend from the Egyptian. You don't look like the Egyptian at all. The Egyptian looked like not these Nubians at all. The Egyptian looked like this. Just a melanated North African. That's all. So I touched on the archaeology. I touched on pre-dynastic Egypt and who was there and who was they fucking with. I showed you all the pottery. Even I didn't even talk about. I even got even the pottery, goats and sheep, all that come from the Levant, the Near East, all into Egypt. The Nubians contributed gold and ivory and shit that they mined and did slave labor to get that gold and did business and traded. Ivory and shit like that. Egyptians in general used the Nubians for goods and cheap labor. Greco-Roman world similarly did the same. You guys weren't respected in the Greco-Roman world or in Egypt. Although there were times that they vibed, there were certain special people who may have done work and got respect. Just like in America, it's a good nigga. Okay, yeah. There were some Egyptians who had babies with Nubians, and there were some mulattoes. Yeah, there were some people in Egypt. Yeah, but the population, the Egyptian population, the North African population, were never kinky-haired people in general. If a black, kinky-haired, nappy, woolly-headed Ethiopian African was in the Greco-Roman world or in Egypt, they were working or trading or in entertaining. Black Egypt is debunked. I don't know how many fields of study I got to debunk it with. Prehistoric, Greco-Roman world writings, Greco-Roman world and Mediterranean world, same thing, and the Egyptian artwork of them, the Nubians' artwork of themselves, the Nubian village I talked about, pre-dynastic Egypt and who they was fucking with people in Palestine and Near East. Everybody was fucking with the Near East, the Levant, Egypt, and North Africa were together. Sub-Saharan Africans, tropical Africans didn't have it like that. They were different people. They were cut off from them. And that scholarly work of the classics came from this Ghanaian scholar. Hold on. Here's her right here. Here's her. She not lying to you. That's her right here. That's her. Wait a minute, is this her? Wait a minute, I think it is. You got makeup. Well respected college scholar throughout the world. And what she wrote up in that iconography agrees with everything I've been saying. You afrocentrics been bullshitting. You afrocentrics been lying. You afrocentrics been culture vultures. And it's time for you guys to come back home to West Africa. Leave them other cultures, them other people shit alone. You guys have comedic names because you thought you were the builders of the pyramids, and you were wrong. I was wrong. But I just have the balls and the integrity to change and evolve from what I used once to believe. You guys are still Hotep hustling. You guys are so invested. You've written books. You've changed your name. You named all your scholarship groups Kemetic names. You guys got so deep in, you can't get out. You can't come back home to West Africa. This Asante gang, bitch, and I'm banging. You guys are shaming Black America with your foolishness. Get back to West Africa. Show your ancestors some love and respect. Stop fucking with that economy that's not yours and contribute to the economy of West Central Africa and go visit home. Evolve like I evolved. Put your big boy pants on. Suck it up and grow up. You were on a wrong path, and on a wrong path, you can correct yourself. This next generation, if I can help it, is not going to be no goddamn Egyptomaniac. They're going to be a West Central Africa maniac, and we a Asante gang. I'm a Kumasian. I made that claim when I was there. I said I'm straight Kumasian, Asante gang. And I'm coming back to get my people. I was touched when I went to Ghana. And something said, Chief X, bring your people home. When I stood in the slave castle, them slave dungeons, feelings came over me. And I said, why is these niggas running to motherfucking Egypt? When I went to them rivers and them museums and I touched and I was grabbing all that gold that they got in them rivers. That's off hands, that no one can mind. When I was showing routes that people were being walked through this fucking forest and they was walked through these trees and they walked through these rivers. And I said, I got to bring my people home. And it clicked on me. So that's that shit I'm on. And it's not no bad shit. It's good shit. What I just gave you was a knowledge of self. You haven't been getting a knowledge of self. You've been getting the knowledge of somebody else. This Chief X and I'm out.